What's up, everyone? How's it going? Doing this video pre-recorded this time because I don't have internet access right now, thank God. I'm in the wonderful Forest Park here in the northwest hills of Portland, the land that we now know of as Forest Park. But every time I walk through here, I wonder, what this place was for the people who first lived here and lived here for thousands and thousands of years, what this place was to them, what these streams meant to them, what these hills and stones and trees meant to them. So just a little insight into my own world there, and what I kind of mull over while I'm walking through the forest here. But this is my fourth video in this series documenting my journey of studying psychology and psychotherapy. And yeah, I want to talk this week about active listening. So for those of you who've never heard of active listening, basically it's something that all therapists practice, ideally. And really, if someone is a good listener, what they're doing is just listening to you actively. They're engaged with what you're saying. They don't have an agenda to kind of impose on you, and they're really just sitting there and receiving what you have to say. Also, a big part of active listening that I've learned is validation. And, people really just want to be heard. Michael Meade, wonderful teacher up here in the Pacific Northwest, I heard him say at a workshop last year, most people have never been truly heard. So just providing people that gift of hearing them and that gift of really reflecting what someone says, showing them that you really understand and resonate with where they're coming from, really can go a really long way. So I've been doing this with a few people here and there to fulfill some requirements for my degree. But yeah, I've just been noticing the benefits that practicing active listening and that listening like this has been imparting for me, and how specifically my relationship to my partner has kind of transformed, or really, I guess, been unlike really any other relationship that I've had, in the sense of how we process our stuff and how we deal with things when issues come up, which they always do and will. So yeah, I think just reflecting personally, like understanding that, before I react to something that's shared with me, even if it, causes me pain or brings up, all kinds of difficult emotions, that to remember to listen actively and to really hear what the person is sharing with me before I respond, and just validating where someone's coming from, especially in a romantic partnership. I mean, this is just in my own life, I just feel how healthy it is, and feel how constructive it is. It doesn't mean that those triggers get pulled for me or for the other person involved in this. It doesn't mean that I'm not experiencing the desire to kind of interject with the classic oh, well, wait, but this and that. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I don't struggle in processing issues, or it doesn't mean that I don't feel frustration or anger, and it doesn't mean that I'm an expert listener by any means. I think what I'm just trying to speak to is how just the little bit of really formal practice that I'm doing because of my training in active listening and mirroring and validating and reflecting, how I'm already seeing that transform my personal life, specifically with regards to my partnership. So just wanted to speak a little bit about that today. Also, on another personal note, really big shifts happening for me in my life. I just signed a year lease on a really incredibly beautiful and just perfect house in Southeast Portland. For those of you in my community here in town, I can't wait to like host you for a potluck or housewarming or wherever it is, but super excited about this place. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just so excited to finally be in a really fantastic living situation. The flip side to that is that I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety right now, and I'm preparing to go down to Santa Barbara for my second session at Pacifica, my second school session down there, the second week of December. And you know, I know that for me personally, transition and change always brings up a lot of just kind of frazzling energy for me, and I get frazzled. So we'll see if I can manage to somehow avoid some of that this time. But yeah, just sitting with anxiety, feeling that, thinking about anxiety in our world today, holding the anxiety that, you know, I had this responsibility of this lease, you know, feeling the anxiety of needing to secure, you know, more income to be able just to kind of afford my life at this point. So yeah, just holding these things and kind of reflecting on anxiety in general as a psychological concept. Anxiety is a trip. I realize now that I really understand anxiety, that I've suffered from this thing almost my whole life. And there was a New York Times article a month or two ago about teenagers and preteens in the US with clinical levels of extreme anxiety. And it kind of documented the life and the journey of some of these kids going into treatment specifically for crippling anxiety. And the article talked about how depression has been a really long acknowledged and long treated, I guess, mental disease. I don't want to use that word. I'm blanking on the terminology. But how anxiety has kind of been like, sort of like the unacknowledged younger sibling, or just kind of like pushed under the rug a little bit. And how young people today especially have a really incredibly high level of anxiety, and how it can be directly linked to social media use. So I know it's kind of a weird paradox that I'm sharing this on social media and you're on social media probably watching this, but like, I don't know. Shit's crazy. Like what it does to our internal state, to our emotions, our comparison, you know, that we see these manicured lives of people on social media, and you know, the neurochemical circus that something like Facebook or Instagram actually instills in us. There's a really wonderful speaker and author called Simon Sinek. If you just Google his name, he has a really incredible TED Talk called Start With Why. But he released another book. His second book was called Leaders Eat Last. And in that book, he talks about kind of the different neurochemicals that have to do with leadership. But he also ties it to social media. And basically, when we get our likes, we get a little endorphin boost, you know, and we get these little boosts of things that we're actually physically addicted to. So to me, that's just a trip, you know, and the fact that I feel like it's a conversation that's like just starting to kind of percolate up the levels of culture, but how social media is physically addicting, and how it is completely, you know, can wreak havoc on your internal state, on my internal state. Yeah, so, okay, end social media rant. I guess what the last thing I wanted to speak to is just like share, you know, the ways I deal with my anxiety, which I've like had to kind of understand how to do, and it's taken a long time, I think. So yeah, here I am in Forest Park in the forest, catching one of the few non-rainy days happening this week here in Portland. So yeah, the Japanese have this thing called forest bathing. It's you know, they've actually scientifically proven and researched that spending time in the forest has a physical effect on you and actually reduces your level of stress hormones like cortisol, kind of helps you come back into a place of groundedness in your being, kind of equalizes your nervous system. And I think trees, I can't remember who shared this with me, but trees are like acupuncture needles on the surface of the earth, and basically, you know, treat our physical landscape here, and they're like energy doctors, just like resonating this grounded, deep, infinitely calm, beautiful, radiant energy of peace. So be around trees. That's I have to be around trees, you know, as often as I can. I also meditate every morning, you know, after I take a shower, sit there, light a little incense, put a little blanket around me and just meditate 21 minutes, 7 times 3, 21. I use an app called Insight Timer that has some really nice prayer bell recordings, meditation, just a little bit of physical exercise, you know, whatever you got to do, jumping jacks or push-ups or yoga. You know, it's funny, people say, oh, just do 20 minutes of yoga, but I know for me, if I start doing 20 minutes of yoga, it'll end up being an hour and 20 minutes of yoga, which is fantastic. So yeah, just like simple ways that I try to work with my own levels of anxiety. I've heard that, you know, if you're depressed, you're living in the past, and if you're anxious, you're living in the future. Which I feel does have some relevance to it. Yeah, and, you know, just also personally realizing that I've, in my life, have chosen to put myself in situations and chosen activities and things to do with my time that I think have been really intense. And, you know, now that I'm actually home and kind of in one place for a good chunk of time, I'm realizing like the things that I really need to feel grounded and keep anxiety at bay. And routine is a really big part of that. So I think, you know, for one reason or another, there were years of my life where I had absolutely no semblance of routine, and, you know, was in a different place every week, literally, you know, wasn't sleeping in the same bed. And so, yeah, I think just reflecting on my own personal journey, I think I've gone to like one end of an extreme of like release all routine and expectation of, you know, groundedness, and like see if you can make it work. And I feel like I have, and whatever I needed to prove to myself, I did. And now kind of being home and being sedentary and having a lease and all these kind of real life things, anxiety still comes, just in a different way. And I think you know, I'm just excited to kind of be on this journey of you know, sharpening all the edges of my little toolkits and polishing the mirror, as they say. And I look forward to sharing more, you know, tools and whatever I come across with people. Yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, until next time.